Welcome to the Sales Influence Podcast, where we talk about finding the why in how people buy. I'm your host, Victor Antonio. Thank you for joining me. Super excited that you're here. Thank you for lending me your ears. Now, today I want to talk about Spin the Arrow. Ooh, I love coming up with these titles. Spin the Arrow. All right, let me begin here. For those of you who've seen or have heard my past podcasts, I have something. One of my podcasts talks about the value trinity. And I frame it this way. Business owners, especially B2B business owners, only care about three things. Help me increase my revenue, reduce my costs, or expand my market share. Let me say that again. Help me increase my revenue, reduce my costs, or expand my market share, all of the above, and I will listen to your sales pitch. In other words, these are the three things that they want to hear. Now, we know also that within companies today, especially large enterprise companies, right, that the number of decision makers required to make a buying decision continues to increase. Some put it at 6, some put it at 8 decision makers. In order to make a buying decision, you need to get all these folks on board. We also know that each of these folks also have a agenda. A personal agenda in terms of what they want, reasons they want to buy and reasons they don't want to buy. And so our job in selling is to be able to sell to these different entities, these different decision makers, influencers, but we have to do it in such a way that it matters to them. So what I want to do in this podcast is give you an exercise to go through to help you create a more effective B2B sales presentation. Now, visualize, if you will. On the left-hand side, I have increase revenue, reduce costs, expand market share. Think of 3 rows. Increase revenue, reduce costs, expand market share. Across the top, my columns, I have the different folks involved in making a buying decision. So let's say, for example, column 1, CTO, Chief Technical Officer. Column 2, CMO, Chief Marketing Officer. Column 3, CSO, Chief Sales Officer. Column 4, CIO, Chief Information Officer. Next column, CFO. And the last column, CEO. Now, 6 different people required to make a buying decision, each with their own interests in terms of whether they want you to increase their revenue, reduce their costs, or expand their market share. Let's go through this slowly. Now, let's look at a Chief Technical Officer, a CTO. Now, the technical officer is concerned about every time they integrate a new piece of equipment, can they integrate it? How will it operate? Is it upgradable? Is it expandable? In other words, they're looking at how is this going to fit in with what I'm currently doing today in terms of operations. And what this entity will do, this CTO will do, will find ways, will look for ways to try to make things more efficient, pull it all together, make it tighter, but the end goal is to reduce costs. So now I know that if I'm talking to a CTO, a Chief Technical Officer, they're interested in the technical aspect of how this integrates into the system, but they're also maybe looking at training, right? In other words, if I install a new piece of software, I got to train people to use this software. How much time and effort is that going to take? So the CTO is mainly going to be concerned about how can you reduce my costs by using this new piece of software that you're trying to sell me. Let's move over to the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer. Now, the Chief Marketing Officer may be concerned about reducing costs, but is more likely concerned about expanding market share. In other words, a Chief Marketing Officer's job is to figure out how do we get to new markets? How do we find new markets, identify them, and then how do we go after them with the right messaging? So their interest might be in how to expand market share. Let's go to the CSO, the Chief Sales Officer. Well, you know what they're interested in? They want to figure out, well, how can your product or service help me increase my revenue? So the CSO is focused just on that. The CIO, the Chief Information Officer, might be worried about security and how data is handled. So they're, again, much like the CTO, they're probably concerned about reducing costs because if there's a data breach of some sort, they may get sued. So guess what? We need to protect ourselves, so that would help you reduce costs. The CFO is definitely concerned about reducing costs, right? The Chief Financial Officer is always worried about that, and they'll try to get the best price. Now, the CEO, decision maker number 6, is probably concerned about all 3. How can that product or service help me increase my revenue, reduce my costs, or expand my market share? Now, When I talk about spin the arrow, I want you to think of the value trinity as a triangle. At the top, we have increased revenue. Bottom left, reduce cost. Bottom right, expand market share. At the top, we have increased revenue, right? At the apex, think of that as the point of a spear or the arrow. And now, that point is always your entry point into any of these decision makers. So, for example, if I'm talking to a CTO, the point of my arrow is going to be not increasing revenue, it's going to be reducing costs. That's going to be my narrative, my sales story going in. If I'm talking to a CMO, I'll spin that arrow again, and this time I'll go in. The point will be how to expand market share. Get the idea? Because once we can do this, we can talk to all these different folks, this gives us a more effective presentation. Now, there's two presentations you have to develop. One is a presentation, I'm going to say it's 30, 45 minutes, at the out 60 minutes, no more than 60 minutes. Can you create a presentation that's 30, 45 minutes, no more than 60 minutes, that really hits all the concerns of these 6 different decision makers? I think you can. That's challenge number 1 to you. Create an overall presentation that really addresses increased revenue, reduced costs, expanding market share to each of these key decision makers. Challenge number 2. From that larger presentation, what I'd like you to do is create a specialized presentation. So if you ran into the CTO and you just had to speak to the CTO, what would that presentation look like? Because again, remember, they're not worried about increasing revenue or expanding market share. The CTO, like the CIO, they just want to reduce costs. And if you ran into the CMO and you're doing a one-on-one with the CMO, they're kind of interested in increasing revenue, maybe a little bit interested in reducing costs, but they're really interested in how you can help them expand market share. So here's my challenge again. Create a presentation that hits all your decision maker. Call that your integrated presentation. 30, 45, no more than 60 minutes. And then create specialized 15-minute presentations that talks to different influencers and decision makers. And I think you'll find this process interesting. By the way, tip, you can start with the individual presentations first. In other words, create that 15-minute presentation for the CTO, another 15-minute presentation for the CMO, CSO, so forth and so on, and then maybe integrate it into a larger presentation. Let me know how that goes for you. I use this type of presentation style all the time when I'm talking to a specific group. Let me know what you think. I want to hear your feedback, and if you're currently doing it, I definitely want to hear your feedback. And that is it for this Sales Influence podcast. Don't forget to leave me some feedback at iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube. Let me know what you think. As always, I do appreciate it. I try to read them all, but I can't, but I do my best. Also, check out the Sales Velocity Academy. You know the deal, salesvelocityacademy.com. How to sell more faster. If you have salespeople who are struggling, you might want to check it out. Lastly, I want to thank you for listening. This is Victor Antonio, always reminding you, selling ain't hard when you know how. Take care. Hi, I'm Victor Antonio. I'm an author, sales trainer, and keynote speaker. I'm often asked, what makes a great speaker? Is it someone who delivers real content that the audience can use? Is it someone who engages the audience so they're part of the learning experience? Or is it someone who can motivate an audience to push them beyond their comfort zone and discover new abilities? The answer is yes. But the most important thing to remember is that I'm not there to look good. I'm there to make my client look good. Simply put, it's never about me, and it's always about them.